Good evening and welcome to Bridge Community Church midweek. We're in the month of June, and as you know, we are encouraging each and every one of us to prayer walk during this month, just once during this month. You can do more if you want to, but the challenge to us is to one prayer walk somewhere in the month of June, whether it's during the day or in the evening, 15, 20 minutes, whether you do it on your own or as a couple, or as a family, or with friends that you know, and just to prayer walk your streets, your neighbourhood, and pray blessing. Pray blessing over that GP surgery, blessing over that small business shop, blessing over that care home, blessing over that primary school, blessing over the neighbours, praying, God's kingdom come, God's kingdom increase in this place. And I want to encourage you to consider doing at least one prayer walk this month. And I have two passages of scripture that I want to read and share that are an encouragement, hopefully, and help us with our praying. And the first one is in Luke chapter 5, verses 12 to 16. And here's what it says. While Jesus was in one of the towns, a man came along who was covered with leprosy. When he saw Jesus, he fell with his face to the ground and begged him, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." Jesus reached out his hand and touched him. "I am willing," he said, "be clean." And immediately the leprosy left him. Then Jesus ordered him, "Don't tell anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest and offer the sacrifices that Moses commanded for your cleansing as a testimony to them." Yet the news about him spread all the more, so that crowds of people came to hear him and be healed of their sicknesses. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Now, I don't know about you, but as I read that passage, and I encourage you to read that passage yourself, when you suddenly get to verse 16, it suddenly seems out of place. All this stuff about Jesus and his ministry, healing people, crowds gathering round him, and then it says, but Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. And there's a real lesson here for you, and certainly there's a lesson for me. I don't know about you, but as lockdown has eased, as things have begun to open up, there's more and more to fill our time. We can go to restaurants, we can visit people in their homes, happy days. We could go to the cinema, we can go to the gym. There's so many more options now to begin to fill our time. And I remember back to the first lockdown, so many people said it felt like a breath of fresh air because the busyness and rush of life somehow had been put on hold, and suddenly they had time. Time to pray, time to walk, time to connect. Well, we're entering a season where our time is increasingly going to be filled. And as I look at this passage, I see a very, very busy Jesus. Healing, preaching, teaching, crowds gathering, people clamouring for his attention. His diary pretty full, people wanting to see him, wanting to have time with him. Crowds gathering around him. The news, it says, about him spread all the more, so even more crowds came to hear him and to be healed. All that praying, all that individual prayer with different people. It must have been exhausting. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Somehow, some way, Jesus is exempling to us that in order to sustain serving and ministry and life, you have to have in the rhythm of your life somehow, some way, an ability to withdraw and to pray. Jesus is saying to us, you're only really going to sustain things if you build in to your schedule, build into your diary away time, downtime, time for yourself, time to be with God, time to withdraw, time to switch off the computer, time to get away from social media, time to just be away. And I know that's not easy to do. I grew up in a home of 7, mum, dad, 2 brothers, 2 sisters. When I was a young Christian, there was not a quiet place in the house, I can tell you. Not a quiet place. If I was going to get any sort of quiet, I literally would have to go out the door and go for a walk. And I want to encourage you to perhaps build that into your rhythm, maybe just once a week. Just once a week, perhaps just going for a walk. I mean, that ticks a lot of boxes. It's healthy for one. It's good for your health. Fresh air, exercise, a nice brisk walk, 20 minutes. It's good for you. And it also gets you out of the way, gets you away from distractions. And maybe in that 20 minutes you can have time where you just begin to talk to God, listen to him as you walk. Maybe you can incorporate praying blessing over homes as you go by them, marriages in the area, families in the area, and just become that intercessor, that person who stands in the gap on behalf of your street and your area and your surroundings. It's a wonderful, wonderful ministry, and you can do it. Jesus often withdrew. I have to stop at just the word Jesus, because it always seems, I don't know about you, but it seems kind of strange to me. Jesus? Did Jesus really need to do this? He's the Son of God. He's God incarnate. Does he really need to withdraw? Does he really need to rest in that way? I mean, we get physical rest when we sleep. We get mental rest when we withdraw from all the distractions. If you're on social media, if you're looking at screens all the time, it's mentally draining. And we get rest mentally and emotionally when we withdraw. Jesus, the Son of God. And I know if Jesus needed to do it, then I need to do it. And it's not just because it's the right and spiritual thing to do, it is, but it's healthy. It helps to sustain us. Jesus often withdrew. I think of the word often. It tells me Jesus had a rhythm in his life of getting away, going aside, talking to God, listening to God. And somehow, somewhere we need to get this rhythm into our lives. And again, I know it's not easy. We are so busy and getting busier. I wonder if we can maintain some of the stuff we gained during lockdown. Most of us have probably walked more than we've ever walked in our lives. At the beginning of lockdown, I think Karen and I walked every day. We're still walking probably most days now. Often on an evening, off we'll go. 10, 15 minutes, 2 or 3 times around the local park. That's all it needs. I wonder if we can keep some of that stuff. And instead of it all being suddenly coming crowded out yet again, I wonder if we can begin to perhaps at least once a week keep a walk going, and in that, pray. Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Let me encourage you, even this month in June, why not start prayer walking? This month we're encouraging you to do it at least once. Maybe you could do it once a week. Maybe it's something you could keep going. Begin to build something in that rhythm of getting away and communing with God and interceding for your street. And then finally, as I come to a close, one last passage is in James chapter 5 and verse 17. It says this: Elijah was a man just like us. He prayed earnestly that it would not rain, and it did not rain on the land for 3.5 years. Again he prayed, and the heavens gave rain, and the earth produced crops. Elijah was a man just like us. The reason I think James says this is because he's trying to encourage these Christians to pray. And perhaps, like you and I sometimes, we can think of people who are amazing people in God. People have done amazing things, and somehow we can tend to think maybe they walk on a different plane. Maybe somehow, somewhere they're a bit closer to God than we are. Maybe sometimes we're tempted to think, I think if I was God, I'd listen to them more than I would listen to me. And so James says to these people, Elijah, and to these people, Elijah is a superhero. Elijah walks, a lot of paces ahead of them and at a higher height. In their head, in their mind, in their thinking, Elijah is so far ahead of them. And James says the shocking thing. He was a man, just like you and me. He was just human. He was an ordinary man in the hands of an extraordinary God. And the real point is, God will hear your prayers every bit as much as he would hear Elijah's prayers. God is able to do things through you in prayer every bit as much as he did through Elijah. Because God is an extraordinary God who works through ordinary, humble people. And I want to encourage you not to compare yourself to anybody else. It's fruitless and pointless. I want to encourage you to step up and step out and believe. You see, you are a son of God and you are a daughter of God. We're all sons and daughters. Nobody's more a son or more a daughter than you. You're adopted. He's adopted you into his family and he loves to hear you. He loves to hear you pray. Elijah was a man just like us, ordinary human being. And God answered his prayers. And God will answer your prayers too. Elijah prayed a prayer, and I'd like to say, it's not my phrase, he touched heaven and saw something change on earth. And I believe that through your praying and my praying, we can touch heaven and we can see things change on our very street, in our very area. We can see things happen as we persevere, as we continue, as we get that rhythm of regular withdrawing. We can begin to see God do some wonderful things. And in that walking, maybe you capture this picture. I suddenly think back to Genesis and the idea of God walking with Adam and Eve in the cool of the day. And maybe it's a bit adventurous to think of a picture as you walk out the door to go prayer walking. You're walking with God. And it's true. He said, I'll never leave you, I'll never forsake you. The same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead lives in you. He's with you. When you go walking, God goes walking with you. What a great opportunity to get closer to him, to hear him speak to us, and to see him do some great things. So I hope you find these two scriptures encouraging. I hope and pray you won't let everything now that we're able to do, and as lockdown gets easier and easier and easier, I pray God help us not to so fill our time again that we're in that place where there is no room in our rhythm to walk with you. God bless you. Have a great week. Amen.